Today, you're going to hear from Xavier Bure, our garden manager at our Washington Youth Garden, about how he connects his work growing coffee and cocoa on his farm in Peru with his work in the Washington Youth Garden. As you just heard there, the event is being recorded so we can share with others down the road. But we do ask that you keep yourself muted throughout the presentation, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. You can write them in the chat, and there'll be a Q&A at the end. And we're also going to raffle off some of Xavier's coffee at the conclusion of the presentation. So keep an eye out to your email, on your email, to see if you've won. Okay, before we get to Xavier, you got to listen to me for a couple minutes on some updates about FONA and the Arboretum. I promise to keep this fast, but it's important news. We want to make sure you're aware of it. First and foremost, as always, the Arboretum is open 8 to 5 every day. And we ask for your and other safeties, please wear a mask if you're not vaccinated. And I would imagine many of you have been following the recent news about the nesting bald eagles at the Arboretum. We now have 2 eggs in the nest. As a result, some trails and roads around the azalea collection are closed for the next few months so the eagles can have a little peace and quiet during this important time. If you're interested, you can stay up to date on the eagles through the Arboretum's and American Eagles Foundation's Eagle Cam, or through our FONA Field Notes newsletter or our social media at FONA. But exciting times at the Arboretum for eagles. We want to give you a heads up to be prepared for a new traffic pattern this spring at the Arboretum to help manage the huge number of visitors, and we'll be providing details on that as they become available, but it will be somewhat similar to what we did last year around sort of a one-way flow at the Arboretum. We do have some upcoming events this spring we want to make sure you're aware of. On Saturday, March 26th, the Arboretum's LAR Native Plant Symposium will be taking place. And then on Sunday, March 27th, we'll be holding the annual Native Plant Sale as well that FONA hosts. On Saturday, April the 30th, we'll be having the FONA Garden Fair and Plant Sale. This year, it will only be one day as opposed to past years we've had 2. And we're looking forward to having everyone come out again on Saturday, April 30th for our annual Garden Fair and Plant Sale. We haven't been able to have it the past couple of years, so we're looking forward to welcoming everyone back for the sale. You can always check out our website, FONA Field Notes, and our membership newsletters for additional information on events. And you can reach out to us with any questions you may have as well. Okay, we asked a question of you when you registered for today's Digging In, and that was, if you could only live with coffee or chocolate for the rest of your life, which would you choose? This was by far the most competitive question we've had throughout the Digging In sessions. It is very close. Currently, it is 57% coffee and 57% coffee and 43% chocolate. I guess coffee rules the day with everyone, and you're going to hear a little bit about coffee in Peru today from Xavier. Okay, so I want to introduce Xavier. We get to highlight and promote one of our own today, Xavier Bure. Xavier is beginning his 3rd season as the garden manager at the Washington Youth Garden, where he shares his passion for food and agriculture to create a welcoming garden for youth and educators. He has experience at multiple farms in the DC area and has helped organize and run farmers markets across the region. Since Xavier has joined us, he has been an incredible leader for the organization by working to improve our growing methodology, our crop yields, and the overall appearance of the garden. And to give you an idea of the huge contributions Xavier has made to FONA, the garden has quadrupled our food donations during his tenure, giving over 5,700 pounds to community organizations in 2021 alone. Everyone at FONA is so proud to work with Xavier, and we are thankful that he is on our team. As far as his background, Xavier is originally from Peru, where his relationship with agriculture began at a very early age. He grew up surrounded by coffee and cocoa and learned all about it on his family farm, which you are going to hear a lot about today. So with that, I hand it off to Xavier, FONA's garden manager, to tell you a little bit about his experience with cocoa and coffee.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a presentation. That was like, makes me feel very good. Yeah, thanks so much for the invitation too. I I want to start like the presentation today, and I want to share a little bit of like my experience in Peru, growing coffee, growing cocoa, and in other crops too. But basically, these two crops as like the main, crops like we pretty much cultivate in the area, and how all this experience in Peru, um, not just like growing coffee and cocoa, but also the environment like uh, point that's very important. So I want to share a little bit of that, and and how like the techniques of permaculture we've been using for many years over these lands are being like very influenced in my vision of how the culture should be, and how like we take care of the soil, and how all this package has influence in my vision of the culture, and like I'm trying to put those experience into the Washington Youth Garden, um, and I hope like you enjoy it. Next, please. We want to enjoy. We want to start talking about a little bit of coffee, and we're going to start like how this incredible like crop was introduced to Peru. Like, as you remember, coffee, it's not native from the Americas. If you want to understand a little bit more about the story of the coffee, I think it's a lot of information, and I want to try just to focus in here and how this one arrived to Peru. And it's more information about, but like the dates are between like 1700 to 1700, 1740 to 1760 from Ecuador. Everything comes from the north in that time. So after the plantation arrived, begins like expanding to the whole Peru and experiment in different areas, and particularly in areas that have like this mountains, like, or the range are between 4,000 feet. They realized that it's kind of close when the like native coffee it's in Ethiopia. So it's what the regions are mostly right now, the production. And I put there like Jaén in San Ignacio, which is San Ignacio is my hometown. You will hear a lot about talking about this this town. And in beginning of that, I want to start like some kind of um, location about where we're talking about. Where is all this? Where is those located? So we put in next. We will see like the map of South America, and Peru is pretty much in the center of like South America, really close to the Ecuador. And in San Ignacio, this small town when I grew up, is pretty much close to Ecuador, and it's everything is, I mean, all like the rivers and like small creeks are facing the Amazonas rainforest. Um, the next, please. So in this picture, you can see like how like the geography is. This picture was taken like 2 years ago from me going to my farm. And like, this is like a number like between 4,000 or 6,300 like feet altitude. And this is very important as well, like people call like the heaven embassy, because the different amounts of like steps is what we call like to growing different types of crops. It makes sometimes your table being like 100% local. You know, I'm talking about from rice until the coffee ones, you can get everything local. That's what people start calling like the heaven embassy. Or and like in the climate also, you know, if you go into the ballpark, you are like about like maybe 3,000 feet or something like that. And like you see like different crops that's like growing at 4,000 or like and the altitude, you even find like conifers like growing. So that's different parts in like the ability to growing like year-round crops make this land very, very special. And as you can imagine, like we have like different types of fruits every time you go there, and it's incredible. So I grew up around that. We go into the next, please. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of myself being a kid running like behind the chickens in the farms, but like certainly my little one can just like be is a model for me because she enjoys a lot when we go there. I grew up in the 80s. And as you said before, I grew up surrounded by coffee, cocoa trees, and plus another fruit trees, mangoes and like all the tropical tree, like fruit trees you can imagine, but also tea, like native teas. Like in this picture, you will see my little one harvesting some tea and the right picture. um, the next, please. And so everything is probably my earlier, like start like be conscious about the agriculture and like the environmental problems start when like something happened in the 1992. And in that time, Peru was having like a really tough time. Um, some people call it was a terrorism attack, some people call it civil war, but the truth is was just like the government was very aggressive, like with a lot of sanctions against protesting, and even they make a new constitution with like there was very hard for like um, people who maintain communities, especially like communities that are close by any natural resource. And this is what happened with this particular resource. So my town is pretty close to the National Sanctuary, Tabacones Nambaye, which the numbers is huge over there. I can give you any pronounce, but there's a lot of acres of like forest and in different types of forests. We have conifers, then we have like small shrubs. Um, in this forest particularly, it's important because it's a foggy forest. So like it tends to absorb a lot of these clouds and transform in small creeks, and eventually all this water running through serve to the farming or serve to use the communities to drink water. So it's very important for like communities around them, and like the communities around that particular park are pretty much coffee. So it was very important to absorb. So what happened in 1990, 90 to 91, 92, it was just like the government like give the permission to an American company to go and pretty much start like cutting all these trees. And it was shocking for us to see how, imagine a conifers over there, and they're like not as big as the redwoods in in the West Coast, but like the similar huge amount of trees like passing through your town over like huge machinery. And like in that moment, probably I was just 10 years old, I didn't understand much what's going on, but little by little I'm starting involving more and more because my dad was involved, and he was organizing 11 more farmers to kind of protest like that. This is not right because they taking like important resource in it is like when I guess I'm start like a different like actions in my dad there, and I was involved in that, and I was listening a lot what is very important, and I was visiting the place, and I was just very close to that and to farmers. And and so what happened at the end of the story was just what I put shocking event is what like the government say, okay, you're a terrorist. And my dad was in jail for 1 year. I got released after a year, but it was like a struggle for me in thinking a lot how it's possible this and how we can keep defending this resource. And like, of course, the farming ingredient was very important too. And fortunately, in the 5th of March, 1992, he was released. And my town after that, as a local policy, they start like be more conscious about like how we can preserve more the environment. So after this event, all like the policies of the local government, the San Ignacio government, was focused on how we can make farming without like destroying forests, or how can we also maybe like planting other types of trees there, like not necessary we it takes like 300 years to cut it. Maybe it's longer than that. So farmers can be benefits for that. So I was a lot of like policies like the government put in it that like I was aware of that. And of course, it changed my vision of like everything. It was involved environment, it was involved human rights, it was involved like farming, it was involved communication. So it's why I decided to go for journalists. Very like years later to go to college journalists, very like inspired by the journalist who was doing like environment journalism that time, and of course how like the human rights movement support my family. The next, please. After a year, after many years, actually, after college, I returned to work in my town. I became like a community radio director. Actually, I was 26 years old, I think. So, and as we never changed the constitution, so a lot of these problems just keeps changing their facing. And the new problem was the mining, and it's still the problem, the mining. And most of this mining, the problem is with this mining are like, they are located in the heads of the valleys. That means I'm explained before how these trees are very important to make the water happen. And everything is connected through creeks, rivers, and small like lakes. So having a mining in the top of the mountain, it's a very dangerous thing for farmers who are benefits from the water, which is very, the problem is like the water. And of course, like all the chemicals, eventually like the mining companies will do. So this problem, you see in the right, you see some farmers organizing. So in that time, I helped them organize them against the mining company, which is very risky. You know, you can risk your life, or like they can treat you really bad. But you know, it was also a lot of support internationally about how important it's like to protect environment and protect like the organic farming, the farmers they doing over there. And also if the mining was on top, it was dangerous to put like their organic certification from them. And until now, it's a big social problem. You can do more resource about it. But the main cause right now, the problem in many parts of Latin America, is the mining. Even in Central America, I think even in here. Next. So how I landing do sustainable coffee farms. So when you're working with desert, when working like environment, like a lot of people asking, okay, you have the right to say something, but you need to have like a farm and you have to demonstrate how like you doing it. So always in my mind was to having a farm and like and do what like the farmers over there been doing, and like be a farmer, be part of that movement. But like the sustainable coffee farms, just to explain a little bit, you can see like some seedlings like in the left, and some coffee plants growing along bananas and other like trees and shrubs. So basically the farms are create in a circle or reuse their energy, like kind of imitating the nature. So over the years in San Ignacio, we growing coffee along native trees or secondary forests, or we growing with like we growing together with something. We never grow coffee alone. I know a lot of farmers, like industrialist farmers, they growing like use coffee and they don't have any other companion planting. We want to talk a little bit later. Like they're like it makes like a little bit harder to have because the farm becomes like a monocultive. And like in San Ignacio, we are not like big farmers. We are like small farmers. We'll explain a little bit later also. So in that way, it's not just the coffee tree when I'm talking about. The picture is coffee tree, but also a home for birds and mammals or insects, or it's pretty much recover the native fauna like it used to be there. Reminding coffee, it's not native from there. So we use putting the coffee in there. But the point is like how we can recover like the nature of like the environment was before, like when we want to put the trees. Now it's another technique. So I think they still exploring the techniques how like a coffee can grow under like the native trees, which I think like good results I have it because I will explain later. In one part of the farm we have like a native trees also surrounded by coffee, and they doing particularly very well. Next, please. So in the farm, as you said, the farmers have to organize through co-ops because we are small farmers, we are not big farmers. So our organizations, and as you know, like the expense of export are very, they're very high for like small farmers. So they have to use um, organize in part of co-ops, but also when you're part of co-op, you can share knowledge, you can share techniques, and you can share, for example, this is a good example how like birds are coming and eat like the like some food, but like in how we attract other animals, but also the agroforestry. And like you see some trees along this in the left, this coffee farm, they're growing like trees. So invite like to the farmers, not like not to go to take like those conifers on the top and get benefit from that, but growing your fast growing like in woods. So next, so I want to talk in this part about like Finca La Esperanza or Esperanza. This is my my farm. In Spanish, Finca La Esperanza means the hope farm. So as I say before, I have a dream always to get a farm, to get involved in this like a beautiful moment to like, or like organic agriculture in Peru. And as you can see, the beautiful land I like for they have the fortune to live like mostly all my time, my life. So I always want to have a farm. In 2015, we bought like around 30 acres of land, which has like some forests and crops, something I was looking for. The crops were a little bit abandoned because the land was just like maybe 15 years with no production, and like the areas that are not cultivated like maybe 30 or 40 years. We still like try to debate that, but the good thing is like we have a good amount of forest we are planning to protect, and we cultivate just like maybe like 10% of the land, and based on not monoculture farm, and like diversifying like the products. So the last owner has some cocoa in there too, which was like a surprise when we get the farm, because we know how hard it's growing cocoa. I want to explain a little bit later. And coffee, and so we have to just kind of rebuild the whole farm alive. So in this picture, you will see like some picture of the farm and the right, and I put like a little white like button so you can just kind of see where is the farm located, and of course the landscaping, it's stunning over there all the time. Um, Next, please. So I just want to talk about this coffee and cocoa forest of idea of how those three crops can live together. As I say, like a coffee, it's not native, but for sure, cocoa is native. And then you can find also a lot of story about cocoa, where a lot like in Central America, they claim they're native from there. But new studies, they say in South America, they should be found like some cocoa beans and some like ruins. It's still a debate. The good thing is like we have like the cocoa in this farm, particularly the original cocoa, like they can call many names. They can call criollo. There's things like mostly Guatemala produce salad, and like they call like porcelain or simply white cocoa. Um, so I think this pictures I've been taking for this past years. Unfortunately, I cannot share tons of pictures, but I kind of pick it out like the best pictures I can share with you. And you can see like the green coffee in the left. The variety we have is Katimor, and I feel like we this past year we get like a couple more varieties. They're more like they're like less like a mixture. They're more sensitive to disease, but like the flavor is fantastic. And as you see, my dad is in the center of this picture, walking in through this forest is around to the farm. Um, so as I said before, this forest is a mixture of native and secondary forest. Secondary forest meaning like they just grow over the spots like 40 years, they're not native, and some are the native like huge trees is still in there over like this like 60 years the farming is being placed in this location. um we I would say like this I was saying before, this cocoa, it's like the oldest cocoa variety we can find it. And like the I think the percentage of like the production of this type of cocoa is just 1%. So meaning like any chocolate you're drinking, you probably don't get in this variety, because this variety is really hard to find and it's very expensive to produce, because they're not very resistant to any pest or disease. So over like I think in Africa and many parts of Brazil and other parts of like South America, we're producing like a variety of cocoa, like they have like a more robust like resistance to any other pest, but also is big. You know, they make sure like they create a huge shell, they can get more cocoa beans, but the original cocoa is very small. It's like tiny. It looks like it's smaller than like football like ball. And like in next picture, we will see my wife, for example, and um, this slice, you will see about traditional cocoa production, but you can see also the shells of this cocoa. They are not too big. Usually they are yellow. Usually they're sometimes red, but it tends to be more like yellow, this part. So, and fortunately we have this cocoa farm. So we're trying to keep also like the farm with this variety. So I want to start very quickly talking about the traditional chocolate production and how like we do by hands, not we didn't start using a lot of machine on it. So as you see here, my wife is taking like open the shelves, taking out like the beans and putting like in this bag. It's in her right side. And a process can take a little bit longer. After that, all the beans are collecting and then put in the buckets. And you can put in the buckets, you can put in wood boxes, depending on how much cocoa you have it. And like, we don't have a lot yet because cocoa takes a long time to grow. Um, and like after that, the fermentation, it's very important. Probably a lot of people don't know like the cocoa, it's fermented. And it's like the key for be a chocolate, it's starting the fermentation. A cocoa without fermentation, it's not gonna take like the flavor, like the characteristic flavor we like about chocolate or hot chocolates or any other like juices of chocolate. After 3 days or 4 days, depending on the temperature, we will lay down all and like we let the dry for the sun for also 3 days or 4 days, depending how the weather is. So after that, next, please. The traditional way is this one. After it's dry, we wood roasting. So my wife, it's also roasting the cocoa and like wood. And in the second one, after the process, it's probably the hardest part, like the hand peeling. So it's my wife with my little one, like teaching how to peel this cocoa. It can take hours if you have a good amount, in hours and hours of peeling. And after that, we just grind, we're just grinding. Like this process also is very important for us, since we use this chocolate mostly for the hot chocolates, and like we use for make like some cakes and stuff like that. We are not using for bar eatings. Even sometimes people eat it right away. We don't do that because we know our grinding is not like not good enough to do it. But because I know like some farmers for make bars, they can grind it 30 times. And I don't know how they do it, because after 2 grindings, because this is hand, this is no machine, and it's just make my hands, you can just feel like exhausted. And I'm telling you, I've been doing this one for many years. This is the hardest part, actually, to do a manual one. And after that, you see the product on the right. We make some kind of bars, some people make kind of balls, and we're ready to use it. Quickly, also, next, I want to explain how we do the traditional coffee ones very quickly. So first we harvest from the plant. You see like from farmer harvesting the coffee, and then we pass by like a hand machine, or some farmers start using like electrical motors right now to take it out the first skin of the bean, which we call this pulpado. And after that, this is probably very interesting for many people because they don't know the coffee is fermented too. And this is the very important key again of the quality of the coffee. Your coffee can be not a good variety, but if you do a good fermentation of your coffee, you can have like an incredibly tasting coffee, and you cannot imagine. And like it's a lot of process. Probably when you buy your bag, you'll see a lot of process there and there. Some people call honey, some people call wash it, but the and some people start calling like a black fermentation. It depends like how is your coffee, but everything starts in the fermentation. And like we usually do like washing coffee because it's the most common, it's fast. So basically you ferment for 24 hours and the next day you wash and then you put in the sun. But some people you just don't wash it, you just leave it there how it is um with the whole fruit. You can see it's a lot like of like the sugars, and then you leave everything there and you don't wash it, and that's people call some honey, or some people discover and becomes a little bit dark, they call that. It's depends the process. People are even give some animals to eat it, and like they call they do in the south of Peru, they collected the from like the poop of the animals, and like you find this one in Asia too. Anyway, you can find more information about this one, but the key is the information, like, sorry, the fermentation for having a good quality of coffee. Next, please. And then, of course, we dry the coffee. So, and probably this is like the mechanical, the most like easy part for coffee. I will say coffee is much easy. I don't know if because there are many years and or because the machinery is more accessible, but like the peeling is through the machine, and like and we pass through the machine and we just get like we just got the green coffee, and then we're roasting and we enjoying it as like in a cup, also regular coffee. Um, I will also I also will say like the aroma, it's between the smokiness of the wood to roasting this coffee. It's just like I cannot compare it with like machines, gas machines, or any other machines they do like the roasting coffee. Okay, next, please. So as I talked before about like the health of the soil and like our companion planting, um, we for many years we've been using like these techniques of like companion the coffee with like some kind of shade. Of course, when the coffee is very small, it's hard to bring in a shade, but the bananas are perfect for that because the bananas growing really fast, same as the yucca, and some fruit trees are growing fast, but not as fast as the banana and the yucca. So when you start in the farm in Peru, you if the person is like conscious about this to rebuild the soil, you will see like along a lot of bananas, and also the bananas are like putting a lot of nutrients in the soil and leaving like a fantastic mulch. And we don't have wood chips in Peru. I wish we can have wood chips. We don't have wood chips, but the banana leaves making a great mulch into the soil and start protecting the soil incredibly. And also take the weeds out. The pressure of the weeds is very low when you start doing the kind of process because the weeds are like the shade and also a natural shade. The process is long though. It's between 5 to 7 years until we have like um, the the true trees we put it in there, because along this banana trees also are like some trees that are going to take like a little bit longer to grow, you know, but 5 7 years they are already tall enough to protect like the soil and leave also fantastic mulch and add some nutrients into the soil. Um, as I say before, the nutrients, sorry, the pressure of the weeds is very low, and like every farm you go in Ignacio in Peru, and I think in parts of small farming, it's they they very like conscious about what's gonna be the companion for my plants. The same happened with the cocoa. When the cocoa is small, they like to be like shady. It's why you see in the right picture, you see like bananas around this cocoa. This is, by the way, this is a cocoa plant, um, because they like to be in shady. Eventually, the bananas will have to be cut it but when the cocoa takes already the whole area. And the good thing about cocoa trees, they create the environment, like they're not allow other plants to grow surrounded. So eventually it's not gonna be weeds. And under the trees or the cocoa trees, this is like a fantastic, nice environment. It's just fresh, a lot of mulch to the leaves, and like, of course, the beauty of like the shells of the cocoa. It's like another story. Um, Next. So after many years working in Peru, I moved to United States. I moved to this area. I moved to DC actually, and I was just working, trying to looking for learning about more farming in the East Coast. I know like the farming can be different, so I'm start first of all start volunteering in Claggett Farm. As you can imagine, my English in the time wasn't very well, so I thought like, hey, like I will do garden. Doesn't need much to do it. I just want to learn more about vegetables, and I work in Claggett Farm in Upper Marlboro. It's like, as I say, first volunteer, and then I became like a staff member. I don't know if the pictures are like, we're sharing picture there, but let me share. Oh yeah, in these pictures, in the first part you can see I am a part of the crew, and like, and with Gail, with later she started Tree Park Harmony Farm in DC, and which also I worked with her at the beginning of the of the farming, and Zachary, who is like sorting tomatoes with me here, she is working for like a Dreaming Aloud right now, like the farm located in Northeast, and with some farmers in Virginia farmers and the farmers markets organizing by like Fresh Farm. So I I feel like I was working with farmers, I was visiting them, sometimes volunteering with them, but I feel like I need to start like doing my own thing, and it's why I decided to I want to work with like Washington Youth Garden. Next, please. So this is probably one of the first pictures I took when I'm start, and unfortunately, I start like I think 2 weeks before the pandemic start, and like, and suddenly we don't have volunteers. Suddenly we don't have like, like they usually what I was expecting. So here's Emilia, regarding coordinator. So with her, we start like to talking about how we can kind of like prevent like to do a lot of the work, since we don't have a lot of volunteers. And like, and was a lot of methods was applying in Claggett Farm and Tree Park Harmony Farm too, that it wasn't low scale in that time in those farms, but the thought, since like the garden is not too big, I think it will work. So, and that can eliminate lots of work doing like some methods like we apply later. Next, please. So, and we apply a method called deep mulch compost, or and sometimes a straw. So we analyze the garden. We start this method and like this technique in 2020. In fall 2020, we start making our first beds, and the results were very positive. But it was 2021 when we fully see the system in action, because we eliminate a lot of weeds of the garden because we don't till. That deep mulch compost means you don't till. You pretty much copy what like the nature is doing. It's growing in layers. So we don't mix in, we use growing in layers is how the nature is. So instead to just digging it up, we use adding in layers. Instead of that, we growing in soil, we're not losing soil. So the method is fantastic. I mean, I'm happy to talk deeply more about this event in next. And the companion planting I was talking in, what we do in Peru, I was thinking, I think it's possible to do it. I know a lot of farmers, they've been doing for many years, and in the Washington Garden, it was like the perfect place to do it. We need to fight the weeds, so fight the weeds, so this method, but also growing as much possible we can in the space. For example, in this bed, you can see volunteers working in okra and beans. We don't have okra yet, but we have a lot of beans. So by the time the okra is tall, we cannot grow any more beans. So we have two crops in the main time. So we kind of like utilize very good or place, and you can see also celery. It becomes fantastic companion with spinach. And the right side you can see like some structure growing, some beans with like cucumbers, good companion. The beans like help like to put like nutrition into the cucumbers, and also because they become bushy, prevents a lot of weeds growing around. While by the time it's like finished the season of green beans, we have like cucumbers. And I will say the results were incredibly fantastic. As Craven said initially, we get a lot of GL this year. We donate more than 5,000 pounds because I say we because this is not just my work. It's Emilia and like some staff work, and also some last year some volunteers and some interns make this possible. And we can get like in a garden like we'll share this knowledge with public to pass through the arboretum with like teachers. And also all the time for us is also like a challenge to find like a new way to exploring new garden techniques to we can share where we community. um, I think this is all I have it. Like I'm happy to receive any questions. I know I was trying to be very short and like this whole story, but if you would like to like know more about, I'm happy to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Xavier. Appreciate the presentation, and all of you can see the great work that he does and the experience that he has when he's brought to the youth garden as well. And you know, you mentioned it's certainly not just his work. My gosh, we had it's a complete total team effort, and we've had to change a lot of what we've done over the past couple of years. But Xavier has been an incredible leader for us, and we're very thankful for his contributions, and glad that you all were able to hear from him today. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we'll be glad to have Xavier answer them for you. Okay, here's the first question. What has been the biggest challenge for you with the youth garden, Xavier?
Thank you. That's a good question. Thank you, Laura. It was a lot of challenge for me because I'm starting before the pandemic, right? Before when I accepted the position, I imagine myself like surrounded by kids, running with volunteers and that stuff. And certainly I was doing by myself in the gardening with sometimes with Emilia or some staff like member. So that was a little bit hard. I will say for everybody, and also because I have family, it was like many things happened in 2020 that like I feel like a little bit challenged, but also knowing every single part of the garden and finding the right method the garden needs to like meet their goals, to be beautiful, to be teachable for people and teachers, and to be welcoming for like kids. So it takes, I think, like at the beginning that was a challenge, but little by little the garden itself has been telling you what they need, and this is like the beautiful part to work with plants.
Thank you for that. Next question is, what was growing with the celery in the last picture, Xavier?
It was spinach. So spinach and celery are very good companions, as you understand. Celery will take longer to grow, but spinach is it grows quickly. So before, like while the celery is growing, you can have a couple of 3 harvests of spinach until like the celery is ready and you can get celery.
Okay. Next question, lots of great examples of what has worked well in the garden. Did you learn any lessons from mistakes?
All the time. You know, this is the good thing about plants. Like they've been telling you like which soil is working, which soil is not working. Actually, it's something I've been talking with Brian about. Like we working with 2 types of compost. We working a compost from sorry, compost from College Park, city of College Park. This is like a regular compost, and also we work with compost from veteran compost. Sorry, veteran compost. And you learn, like, for example, if you want to grow roots, like they say, want to grow like turnips or radishes or stuff like that, you cannot grow in veteran compost, for example, because the amount of nitrogen and nutrients in that compost is really high. Then your crop, means your root vegetables, never going to make a good, like, a root. Everything's going to grow like green and becomes a beautiful green. But if you grow with the other compost from the city of College Park, you will have many good like yields, carrots, everything, like it goes deeply. It's fantastic. First of all, because it's very soft, and secondly, because it doesn't have a lot of nutrients, so it invites to the plant to grow the roots and not like just the foliage part. So this is like, the nature just tell me that.
Well, here's a compliment with a question, Xavier. The Washington Youth Garden looks so great now. What is the plan for the future of the garden space?
Thank you, Catherine. I think we are now working, and we definitely want to keep doing the methods we're doing, because it looks it's been working very well. But like so far, we've been working in a redesign garden. I think like we in past like presentations, we share a little bit about like we thinking about like to expand the garden a little bit, or maybe we just redesign some parts, like they need to be redesigned, because it's like as I don't know if you visit the garden, but the garden is a little bit too close to the forest, so that's a little bit the challenge to grow in the shade. So we trying to just redesign the garden, maybe improve some beds in the front when we get more sun, and it's much better to grow vegetables in that area.
Okay. And I'm just going to insert my own question here, Xavier. What about the future of your farm down in Peru? What are your plans down there?
Thank you. As I've said before, we have some forests. Like this past December, I was walking through this forest, and like we find out like it's the refuge of many mammals. They're like pretty much are disappearing, like because the city is growing and like the houses are growing surrounded. So we planning to do like a private like a protection area. We wish we could have a longer, like more land, but unfortunately, like the pressure of the city, it's not too close to the city, but eventually in a few years, we will think about it, like the city will be closer to us. So we have to protect this land as like a house for those animals, and the house for those trees they living in there.
Okay. Laura wants to know where we can find your delicious coffee in case they are not the winner of the lottery.
Well, I should say we export coffee through co-ops, and like sometimes you can, I mean, if I will say like any coffee from San Ignacio, it's the best coffee. It's not just my farm, but any coffee from the area I showed, like it's the best. If you see like sometimes any like roaster has like something like San Ignacio, I'm sorry, Peru, and they say Cajamarca. Cajamarca is the name of the state. That means it's coming from my town. Now my own coffee, I will say it's a little bit hard because we export the amounts to Europe through co-ops. So mostly our coffee goes to Europe. I going and I get a little piece for me and to share with friends and with you guys too. But definitely you can find coffee from that area.
Okay. Can you say a little bit more about no-till gardening, the advantages and where you learned about it?
Well, thank you. As you remember, I grew up without tractors, so we don't know what's tilling, and you definitely cannot work with a tractor in coffee farms, or because it's like the land, it's like not flat and it's hard to drive in a tractor. So for me, seeing a tractor when I came here, it was like, what we using that, and like eventually you start going deeply in that, and I will say like some farms they doing because it's like the way it's been doing traditionally, but some new farmers start doing like a different methods. So like not tilling, the benefit of not tilling, first of all, it's less work, like easy. You don't have to do it. Like you just put a plan on it. but also when I say no tilling, it has to be a good companion with like, for example, cover crops or anything keeps growing in the farm and in the bed, in your bed or in the beds. So like the biology of the soil is always active. So when you take it out, this one, the biology tends to maybe die or not die. And the method I mentioned, it's basically mulching with compost on top and growing in that. Some people are scared of that, but it's a new movement, like started in England, I think, and like a lot of farmers have been doing it here about this method, and they don't have to weed much. They don't have to use till a lot, because tilling is a hard process. If you don't have a tractor, you got to do it with a shovel, and that's just, it's impossible, especially when it's 90 degrees outside. And like in that with the method, like it gets a lot of benefits. It takes time. You have to be a little bit patient with this method, but eventually you will reach your goals with this method.
Next question is, do you know why chocolate or coffee isn't sold with fermentation ranges like it is for roast, light versus dark, or cocoa percentage, for example?
I want to see the question. Can you repeat like question again? I can't hear very well.
Sure. Do you know why chocolate or coffee isn't sold with fermentation ranges like it is for roast, like light versus dark, or cocoa percentage, for example? So I assume there's ranges for fermentation. So why isn't it sold with that specified?
It's interesting. You know, I think like, I mean, 15 years ago, the coffee and the cocoa has like a different types of information. Right now, a lot like of the community who consume coffee and chocolate start asking, where is this coffee came from? So, and now the roasters understand that, and they start putting like, oh, this coming from this like place. But years later, people start asking, no, but I want a specific, you tell me where this coffees came from. So another roaster start like, oh, it comes from this farm. So I think eventually in some point, we will ask for more information about what we're getting for these products. Like it's interesting, like, because all the fermentation parts happens in the farm, and like and what like the co-ops and all like the roasters get, it's like the process they want it. And they say, I want like wash please, or I want like honey one, or I want like, depends on kind of process, like the intention of the roster. It depends, it will depends too. Now in cocoa, I think cocoa has to be even way longer fermentation than coffee. And like, if you ferment too much, you can destroy your beans. So the farmer has to be very aware of like what is the right one. So it has some techniques to do it too. So basically, you cut the bean in half, and like, as you understand, with fermentation, the cocoa bean, it's pretty much not going to be a plant anymore because it's under like fermentation. It will kill the bean. So when you open, you can see it looks like some kind of like kidney. Like when you open a kidney, you can see inside, you can tell, okay, this guy is ready.
Okay. What are the best countries or environments to start a coffee or cocoa plantation? How much land would be best suited to grow such crops?
This is a good like question. I think like in Central America, a lot like of the coffee plantations and cocoa plantations, they start like working in this in this process of like good environment, it always is a challenge because, you know, as I said before, like big companies are starting to extract some forests, working in some like mining companies, and it's always a challenge for them to be in a farm. But like I will say like Central America has like good examples of that. Central America too. And unfortunately, all these good examples are like in low scale. Like they're not like, I see barely like big scale farming of cocoa, big scale farming of coffee, doing like some kind of these techniques and kind of like loving the piece of land. right? In Colombia and Brazil has like a huge like lands of coffee. And I was talking before, like also this kind of coffee, it needs a lot, like since they don't have such environment, they receive a lot like of chemicals over the year, and like they don't definitely care about the good practices or not. The small farmers are like giving the example to do it to the rest, and like is why they have to be co-ops. Otherwise, by themselves, they can survive. And through the co-ops, they can just reinforce the idea, or like you have to have this kind of environmental process. And I think Guatemala, I think like some parts of Honduras, and definitely Peru, and like in small parts of Colombia, they've been doing it.
Okay. And one last question for you. With no-till, do you use the compost over the mulch?
Yes. Well, as I was talking with like yesterday, you know, how like eventually your garden have to be growing in soil all the time, because when you lay down some mulch, let's say wood chips, eventually in a few years that's going to be soil. So if your beds there in the center are not like growing in soil, eventually your beds is gonna look like a sunk, or pretty much you don't grow anything in there. So your soil and your beds, same as your soil where you put in your mulch, have to grow together. Now, if you want to put mulch in your beds, this mulch has to be, I will say, almost like disintegrated. Just because if you put like fresh mulch in top of your beds, especially woods, the plants and all like the fungus will compete for the nitrogen. And because the fungus need nitrogen to disintegrate the wood, and the plants also need nitrogen, and it wasn't going to be a really competition, and we don't want that. But if you put like a mulch is almost compost, but still kind of mulch, that will like prevent to protection like the vegetables. I'm talking about vegetables, but because I think mulch and trees, it's a perfect example because you growing in soil over the years.
Okay. Well, this has been great. We are right at 1 o'clock. So I first want to thank Xavier for sharing all this with us today. As you can tell, he is so important to FONA and the Youth Garden, and to have him come on and be able to talk about his work, his experience, and his life in Peru. I obviously, I love to hear it, and you can tell from all the team members on the call that he means a lot to us as well. But glad you're able to hear it today. And then I want to thank all of you. My gosh, your support for these types of events and of FONA and the Arboretum is so important to what we do. And we just thank you for doing this, because digging in is a way for us to share information with you, but a way for you to support us too. So I want to make sure I say thank you to all of you. Your support is so important to FONA. And I want to make sure you keep out for future digging in sessions. We'll keep you informed there. You can always follow us through our FONA field notes or our social media to stay up to date. And keep an eye out for a survey to provide feedback on this event so we can continue to improve what we offer to you. And then lastly, come on out to the Arboretum. It's going to be a good spring. You've got the eagles out there with 2 eggs in their nest, and things are going to be in bloom soon. And we want you to come out and see it. 451 acres for your enjoyment. So again, thank you to everyone for your participation. Glad to have you here today, and we appreciate your support of FONA and the Arboretum, and we hope you have a great day. And with that, it's 1 o'clock. So enjoy your afternoon and hope everyone has a great spring. Thank you very much.